and a wonderful story about him could easily be written. Another interesting personality in the tradition of alchemy is the mysterious character Elias Adepta, the king of the adepts. He shows up once in a while, but has the same elusiveness as the mysterious character of the wandering Jew. The adept king is described in some detail in one or two alchemical works. He is said to have lived forever, to have spoken every language in the world. And it was his peculiar habit to wander about Europe in disguise, always appearing in the costume of the country which he visited, always appearing to conform with its laws and customs, appearing at will and disappearing at will. And the story of Elias Adepta is one of the most fantastic in the entire circle of metaphysical literature. Typical example of the story of Elias Adepta will be found in the writings of men like Sendavogius, an alchemist working in his laboratory, struggling desperately, very devout, very sincere, very noble man. Finally came to the point where he could no longer find any further clues to the mysterious search which he was advancing. He came to the point where there were no longer any answers. He did not know what to do next. He had done everything that he could think of and conceive of, and had studied and worked and labored and prayed and meditated and gone as far as he could. In this emergency, it was not uncommon for a knock to be heard on the front door of his house. A mysterious man would come in. And he would go to the laboratory of the chemist and sit down and talk to him for a few moments, and then tell him what to do. And then, when asked who he was, he would probably smile and say, "Oh, just a wandering chemist who kind of had an idea to give a little advice at this time," and would walk out the door and never be seen or heard of again. Gradually, the records of this mysterious wanderer gained proportions. And for over 200 years, the story of Elias Adepta, wandering about Europe, is to be found in choice archives in this field of research. In a few cases, he told his name. He was Elias the Adept. He was the mysterious adept king who was to come and to rule over the world. Then he would vanish again, like the mysterious bodhisattvas of Shambhala, not to be seen or heard of anymore. As these stories build and as the legends accumulate, the parallels between this concept and that of the Oriental mysteries become very obvious. And we know that we were dealing in Europe with an advanced system of speculation and art and science, which normally would not have existed and could not have existed, and which had to conceal itself for its own protection. Out of the alchemical furor of the 15th and 16th century came the Rosicrucian furor of the early 17th century. And let us remember definitely that all opinion and prejudice to the contrary, that there was no evidence of the existence of Rosicrucianism in Europe prior to the year 1610. That the story like that of alchemy has a much older origin, but that this origin is fantasy, is legend, lore, symbolism, all that we will accept. But actually, this society, which combines certain hermetic and alchemical factors with those of other sciences of the times, such as Kabbalism, magic, actually came into existence about 1610. Nearly all of the alchemists then flourishing in Europe became immediately involved in this new heresy, the Brotherhood of the Rosy Cross. It also was strangely short-lived and elusive. There are a number of accounts of Rosicrucian adepts, including one who whistled rats out of houses, but we won't take him too seriously. In the first 10 years of Rosicrucian excitement, after the publication of the Brahma and Confessio Veritatis, about 900 books were written dealing with the subject by persons who knew nothing about it whatsoever. Many of these books were in the form of open letters, published at the expense of the author, in stating his own qualifications and asking a brother of the society to contact him in some way, because he had no way of contacting the society itself. Naturally, most of these letters and open epistles were ignored. No one has ever been able to find out who the dominant persons were behind this movement, any more than that of the original alchemy. But that they all sprang from a common root, that they all had certain works in common, we cannot doubt. That they fulfilled a very useful function in the unfoldment of the European mind is also quite definite and evident. Now, from this general survey, which is naturally exceedingly brief and which only touches a few of the interesting phases of it, I want to try to start a series of rather brief definitions of some of the elements of alchemy as we have to contact them and work with them in the future. First of all, alchemy, as we say, has three steps or degrees of adepts. One being the adept himself, one the illuminate, and one the initiate. It likewise had three great works or achievements with which it was concerned primarily under the title or general collective term the magnum opus, or the great work. The first and supreme work of the alchemist was the formation or the production by art and genius of the philosopher's stone, the lapis philosophorum. Now, the creation of the philosopher's stone was associated identically with the adept himself. The adept, or the master of the school, and the philosopher's stone parallel. In other words, the adept and the stone had something in common, almost something in identity. The second work of the great school of alchemy was the transmutation of base metals. This, the formation of physical chemistry for the production of synthetic minerals and metals, was associated with the third step in the cycle, namely the initiate. In other words, the initiate was the transmuter of metals. The illuminist, who was between these two, was identified with the search for the universal medicine. So we have the three steps in relationship to the three grades. The creation of the stone being the work of the adept. The discovery of the universal medicine being the work of the illuminate. And the transmutation of base metals being the work of the initiate. These three then represented the keys to the works of the grades, or differentiated the labors of the three classes or orders of alchemists. The transmutation of base metals into gold was the work of science. The creation of the universal medicine was the work of philosophy. The casting of the lapis philosophorum, or the great stone, was the work of religion. Thus, religion, philosophy, and science were the three grades, as in almost all of the great mystical things, schools and systems. The first grade was, of course, the grade of the spirit, the second, the grade of the soul, and the third, the grade of the body. Thus, the body was the transmuter of minerals, the soul, the discoverer of the medicine, and the spirit, the precipitator of the stone. Von Welling, the great German adept, gives us a very definite series of definitions, indicating that these accomplishments conceal the rituals, rites, and secret ceremonies of the grades. And that therefore, under the heading, for instance, of the transmutation of metals, we have an interesting symbolism. The alchemist represented metals under usually 7 symbols. These 7 symbols being identical with the planetary symbols of astrology. Thus, for instance, lead with Saturn, iron with Mars, and so on. These were the base metals. And they were formed together in the form of a 6-point star composed of 2 interlaced triangles, and in the center a 7th point. So that the 6 points on the points of the stars and the 7th in the center constituted the 7 metals. Now, the alchemists also drew this, as defined in the Septium Deum, in the form of 7 of these 6-pointed star patterns arranged in a circle like a wreath. In each one, a different symbol of a different metal was in the center, and the other 6 surrounded it on the points of the stars. Each one, therefore, told us the simple point that the alchemist himself made out, namely that each one of the metals contains all of the others. Now, if we take the points of the metals and we change these into the 7 liberal arts and sciences, we shall then have a key to the great social reform of the transmutational level of alchemy. In other words, your 7 metals are the 7 departments of human society. They are the 7 arts and sciences. They represent the 7 races, the 7 continents, all of the great systems of septiums by which the world's life and progress are measured. Each of these contains within itself the seeds of all others. And the alchemist says that the seed of universality is within every particular of nature. Every atom contains all the rest. Every center contains an infinite circumference locked within its own essential nature. Also, the alchemist pointed out that every base metal contained within itself pure gold. Now, the amount of pure gold contained within any atom or any minute particle of matter might be so slight as to be practically beyond discovery. But alchemy says you do not create gold, you make it grow. The seed of the divine metal is within all base metals, and that the transmutation of a base substance is not actually a change into something that does not previously did not previously exist, but the release of that which is forever present in all compounds and in all elements. So that alchemy is the nourishing and the feeding of the seed of gold in everything.